Hey guys, a lot of you have seen the last video I just put up about how to certain things not to do with Holley Efi, and I've got an overwhelming response about if I could kind of video a step-by-step about how I go about wiring one of these things up. So I figured I would start from the beginning. So what we did here is I gutted everything out of this car. As you can see before, this thing had a whole bunch of stuff up in here. So I gutted this car. I did leave, I left some battery cables in here. I just kind of wanted to show you the biggest question that seems to always pop up is grounding. What's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. So I figured I would start from there. Originally this car, if you look back here, this is the main ground cable. There was only one coming off of the battery. And it was going down to this post here on the chassis. So I'm actually going to keep this cable, right? So this is okay. We're going to have this cable go from here to the chassis. The problem lied in this cable. Some of the problems lied in this cable. This was going from this binding post here up to like a distribution block. You can see where it was terminated. It was like right around here. We don't have that gave us no direct path from the engine to the battery, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to run another cable from the battery back here, right? One cable is going to come from the battery here to this post here, this lug for the chassis, right? So we can ground the chassis right here. That's fine. You want to ground the chassis from the battery. So basically the way this works is you're going to have two buses, okay? So two ground buses, right? One is going to be the chassis, and then the other one is going to be clean. It's going to go to the engine, all right? And, well, I apologize. It's going to be three buses in essence. The third is going to be the ground path through the ECU, and that's going to be your ground for your ground and power that's going from your main cables from the ECU. So that's right here. That's your main power and ground for the ECU, right? So here's your plug. This harness looks familiar to most of y'all with Holley Efi. This plugs into the ECU. You got a fuse. Then this, right in the instructions, when you buy an ECU, there's a paper and it says, run these damn wires straight to the battery. Okay? So that's not up for debate. I don't care to debate it. We're not going to. These go straight to the battery. Okay? What was going on before is that they were ran to the switched side of this contactor. Okay? And before anybody asks, when you see this contactor, it says race wires on it. Race wires did not wire this car. So before you message me, race wires did not wire this car. He just provided the contactor. Okay, these are awesome. This is your cutoff switch. These are awesome. He provided the contactor, which is fantastic. We're going to reuse it. Okay. He provided the switch panel that's up there. We'll get to that later. It's kind of hard to see. It's up here, and we got lights in the way and whatnot. But he provided the switch panel, which is also fantastic. Okay. He provided the kill switch buttons. So if you see this logo, race wires, Rick didn't wire this car. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm out here trying to badmouth Rick. Rick's awesome. Good friend, great guy, very good at what he does. This was not wired by Rick. So let's get that out of the way, okay? Now, where was it? Okay, so the person that wired this car ran this lug here from the ECU to the contactor here, and then he ran this to here. Well, the thought process with a lot of people is that, well, this is touching this binding post, and then this goes to the battery, so that's good enough. Wrong. This goes to the battery, straight to the battery. I can't stress this enough. Straight to the battery. Okay, we're not going to debate it anymore. The reason being is, the reason you want, and I'm not going to get into the theory and the science behind all of this too much, but you want a clean bus and a dirty bus, okay? So the reason is that all of your high amperage draw electronics, right? This car doesn't really have a ton of them, but fans and whatnot, they need to be segregated. And the reason you segregate them is because when you turn on some, like a fuel pump or something, you start a motor that draws a lot of current, it creates noise across the ground path, right? Well, you want to dump that noise to the chassis here. Okay, so before any of the sensitive electronics and whatnot, they need to hit the battery before they get to that noise. And the reason why it has to go to the damn battery is because the battery, while they're getting smaller and lighter, there's still a really big noise filter, okay? So RFI and EMI gets dumped back to the battery cleans it all up for you, makes it nice and shiny, everything works, everybody's happy, okay? So battery, super important, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run this right here to back to this chassis ground, right? That's gonna be our dirty bus. Then we're gonna run another wire from here on the battery up here where I just poked a hole. You can look, you see a hole there. Hang on a second, keep the camera there. Okay, right here. Bam! See that? Everybody look. See that? Okay. We're gonna put another one of those. We're gonna put another one of those feed throughs right there. Hang on, let me go grab it here. All right. All right, look. See this guy here? I don't know, I guess I'm retarded today. Hey, there we go. All right, see that guy right there? All right, I'm gonna shake it around just so everybody sees it. All right, that is going to get hooked up, the inside of it is gonna get hooked up to the battery, and then the outside is gonna go to the engine. Well, what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna pause this video, and I'm gonna do what we just said we're gonna do, and then we're gonna go over how we make our connections on the engine and why they're important. So, hang tight, and be right back. All right, so just made some cables. Chassis ground, right? So this one's gonna go from battery to the chassis. And now this one, I've made labels for it, battery ground, and then this one's gonna say engine ground, right? Because this is what we wanna ground the engine. I like to do this so that the customer, if he ever has to pull anything apart, it's easy for him to make sense of where everything's gotta go. So, gonna install these, and then we're gonna go on to the next step of grounding. Be right back. All right, so we got another battery cable. Ground cable ran back here from the battery. I didn't clean this up yet, but just kind of threw it together to show you in a video. Then it runs up here to our binding post right there, our firewall feed through. And then from there, we're gonna go right there. From there, we will go up to the block. Okay, so I'm gonna use another 2-gauge cable here, and see if I can zoom in here. There is a hole above that starter. It's that one right there. No, that one right there. And we're gonna ground from there over to there. So, I was just about to make this cable, and I was gonna reuse the cable I took off, and I wanted to point something out. Now, the purpose of heat shrink on the end of a terminal, people think it's to protect, the junction, which it's there for that, but there's two reasons. One, this provides a strain relief. That's why you can see, if you look close, it's kind of hard to see. Hold on. There we go. See that stuff oozing out of there? That's glue. All right. So this is adhesive lined. Right. So it glues it off. So it keeps it from oxidizing and corroding. Right. This is why I use better quality stuff. This is Raychem SCL heat shrink. And it glues very tight, and it's very rigid, okay? This is what the previous person had used. And if you notice, I was gonna reuse this until I started seeing this. There's a very little bit of glue in there, and it's kind of hard to see. hold on, maybe if, here we go. Just better background, there you go. You can see this is peeling up, all right? So there's the adhesive that's in there. You can see it right there, look. So it's peeled up. This is junk. So I'm gonna cut this heat shrink off, and you know, we'll take a look at the crimp, whatnot, and what's gonna end up happening is I'm gonna wind up crimping a new end on it, and you know, putting a new piece of heat shrink on it. So I'll do that. I'll install that cable, and then we'll move on. I figured I'd stop and show you. There's the adhesive line heat shrink that was on it. Literally, I cut a slice in it, and then it peeled right off. Protected nothing. So use good stuff. Crimp is a little, it's there. It's not coming off. I'm gonna replace it because I don't like it. But either way, use good quality heat shrink. This is dual wall adhesive lined Raychem SCL is what it's called. But it stays sealed up real good. So, all right, I'm gonna fix this, install it, and we'll keep moving on. All right, so we got the ground wire installed here. This is our post from the battery, right? And it's coming up around here. Kind of hard to see, but like I showed you before, it's going up here onto the back of the block. All right, then come over here. This one's gonna be hard to see kind of as well, but this is the block right here, okay? It's bolting into the block, and then if you follow it down, there's a tab on the bottom. Again, kind of hard to see. Maybe put the camera down here. There's a tab down here, if you can see my finger.
No.
Well,
Oh, yeah, there we
there
go.
we go.
I found it.
Bam. There's a tab down there that's holding the motor plate. What I did was I used a little mini flap wheel and ground off the paint off of the chassis, and that'll be our chassis ground for the engine, and then we got our battery ground over here. I like to segregate them from one side to the other. Things get a little bit busy over by the starter and whatnot. So anyway, next what we're gonna do is that's it for our main engine grounds. If my girlfriend stopped looking at the dog, she's being terrible. But that's it for our main engine grounds. Now, you can, if you choose to, you can run a ground from that battery post right there up to the cylinder heads if you'd like. But in this application, we got aluminum block, aluminum head. We got this is all we need for this combination. Now, the only thing that's going to go onto this engine as far as a ground, the only thing that's going to get grounded is the one wire that is for the cylinder heads off the coil packs, right? And that's going to come up here, and it's going to ground to the front of the cylinder head. Okay, so it's going to ground in here into the front of the cylinder head, and then nothing else is going to get grounded to the engine. Nothing else. Okay, nothing else is getting grounded to the engine. I got to stress that. The grounds that go for the battery off of the coil harness, they're going to tie into that ground post right there that goes back to the battery. I'm going to run, on this application, I'm going to run 10 gauge for battery grounds off of each bank. So 10 gauge wire is going to be ran off each bank to that binding post for the battery ground on the coil harness. So I'm going to upload this video, and hopefully this answers some questions about you know, main grounds, engine grounds, chassis grounds, stuff like that. Again, the idea here is in essence 3 buses, right? Your bus for your ECU, which is directly back to the battery, and then a bus, what you'll call a dirty bus, which is across the chassis, and then a clean bus, which is battery to the engine. As far as as like some of the other accessories that are going to be in the car that are going to need power, there's going to be a relay board in this car, and the relay board that goes in this car We're going to use a Leash Electronics relay board. It's got a small ground just to activate relays. That's all going to go to the chassis. The lights and whatnot, all the grounding is going to go to the chassis. We don't want to ground anything to the engine, right? So we're going to keep everything off of this clean bus, and we're going to ground all that stuff to the chassis, not to the engine. I think that's all I got. So hopefully that answers a bunch of questions. Thanks.